James, in the advent of fall, I am elated to report that I am now half pumpkin, half spice, all man, because it is pumpkin spice latte season. Sure, football is back, and sure, the temperatures are getting a little bit crisper.
Not in this room, Kevin. This room, I'm sweating bullets.
I am also sweating bullets because I insist on drinking my pumpkin spice lattes hot. Sure, you could throw some ice in that, but that's not fall to me, baby. You gotta have that fucking thing hot. And I've had 6 of these things and I am raring to go. What are we talking about tonight?
I mean, obviously, we're talking about the best time of year, which is pumpkin spice latte. Just kidding. That was your bit, and we're moving on from that, aren't we? Because I'm not a basic bitch like yourself.
Listen, if you can bury me in as many Uggs and as many North Face jackets as you need to, I will die clutching a pumpkin spice latte in my hands. If I'm not buried with one, I will haunt you.
Trust me, I will be more than happy to carry around your ashes in just like a little Starbucks cup and just sprinkle that spice everywhere I go.
All I ask is that my name is spelled wrong on the cup.
Of course. I mean, that's a given.
Listen, whether it comes to pumpkins, whether it comes to spices, whether it comes to lattes, that's probably not what you're here for. I'm assuming you are sipping one of those delicious beverages right now, which is good because we have a fair bit to talk about. We do have the trailer, or the teaser, I should say, for the new Coen brother. I was about to say brothers, plural, and then
I was like, no.
I stopped right there and teetered on the edge.
It was perfect. I'm sure he wants to be known as the Coen brother from now on.
Yes. So. Why establish your own identity, Joel? We know you as a part of a duo. Yes, we have the new film from Joe Coen, a teaser for that. We also have a new Apple film starring Tom Hanks entitled, I was about to say Chappie, and I know that's wrong. I was about to say Chappie. Finch! It's Finch. Okay, so we have Finch. We also have American Underdog. We have plenty to catch up on, but first, let's get this dope theme song.
You can't haul your stuff without a trailer hitch. Trailer hitch.
Turn the lights, grab a seat, pour yourselves a whiskey neat. It's time to judge the shit out of these future releases by the movie trailers. We're trailer hits. This movie might totally suck, but the whiskey sure is going down fine. Yeah, we're trailer hits.
Kevin, after listening to that theme song, I was like, is there like another percussion track going on? Like, do we have an updated version of our themes? Oh, nope, that's just Kevin's chair being loud and squeaky. Got it.
Yeah, listen, I'm kind of caught in a catch-22. It's either we bring on our third co-host, which is my squeaky ass chair, or if you've noticed that you haven't heard my chair in the past few episodes, it's to minimize that sound instead of tightening the screws, instead of sitting in a different chair. I've been recording from my bed like a dying emperor, just like limp-wristedly waving my hand and saying, oh no, be gone, trailer for, I don't know, Halloween Kills or whatever the fuck we were talking about. It's, granted, is better for noise, but at the same time, I just feel like a doofus every time I do it. So I went, no, this is a chair night for sure. But in the process of doing that for my bed for as long, James, you're correct. I forgot how fucking squeaky this chair is, and I'm
just gonna buy you a beanbag chair for your birthday or something, and that'll be your new chair.
That's gonna have the beanbag sound though, right? It kind of sounds like gravel.
Not if you sit still.
I refuse to do that. You hear how many pumpkin spice lattes I've had? I am bouncing off the goddamn walls.
Okay.
How many pumpkin spice lattes have you had, listener? Hi, welcome to Trailer Hitch. I'm Kevin.
0. Hi, I'm James.
You're fucking lost. This is a trailer review podcast. We rate and review movie trailers on a scale of need to see more, or never need to see. If James and I both give a trailer a need to see rating, we celebrate. Then we go see the movie, report back to you guys in a segment called Trailer in the Rear View, in which we talk about the trailer in retrospect and then review the film at large. This week, we are going to be looking at a couple of trailers. We're going to be seeing if there's anything more we're adding to our theater slate. And eventually, we are going to get some more reviews in there. Folks, I am trying so desperately to get James to keep to his word and watch Annette. I have led a trail of Disney movies to Amazon Prime leading to Annette. I'm going to get him there, I promise. But in the intermediary, let's talk about some trailers. Let's get into it. James, as we've been talking about a lot of good stuff. We've been talking about pumpkin spice lattes. We've been talking about my squeaky ass chair. Sure, it's loud, but it's comfy. But it's time that things took a turn for the worse. We have to talk about the tragedy of Macbeth.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
Wait, so this isn't a comedy, Kevin?
That's not the vibe that I'm getting. The vibe that I'm getting is Joel Cohen watched The Lighthouse and went, yeah, and then really dived in. Or maybe that's just the A24 aesthetic, because this is the first film Joel Cohen is doing with A24. And their entire thing is listening to a pitch, nodding a few times and going, but how stoned is it going to be? And as long as it's reasonably stoned, A24 is fine with it. But I think Joel Cohen may have just looked at their slate and was like, I'll shoot it in black and white with a weird aspect ratio. And they took a hit and were like, this sounds great by us, man. Fucking here's $25 million. Okay. So yes, this is the tragedy of Macbeth. Now, this is something that James and I were talking about right before we started recording. So the name Macbeth, the play, is actually bad luck to say as an actor in a theater. Is that correct, James? You have a little bit more theater experience than I do, so why don't you regale the people with the tale?
I don't even really remember all the details, but I know there has been bad luck surrounding productions of the Scottish play.
Well, in the Scottish play is what it's referred to in substitution of the title of the play, Macbeth.
Yeah, and like especially when you're in the theater, that's when you go with the Scottish play. And it's superstitious stuff, but at the end of the day, superstition can be fun. And I think there has been a whole cultural and like theater, fun to be had with this ever since this kind of took off, which was eons ago probably. But it's just kind of like a fun inside joke that theater people have now, right? And what better way?
I have to assume there was legitimate tragedy behind some of that bad luck. But now, yes, you're right. 300 years later, we're all high-fiving each other like, the Scottish play.
Yeah, exactly. So what better way to circumvent the superstition and the issue than to call your movie just not what the play is called? And therefore, hey, look, it's the tragedy of Macbeth. We can say that. So I think we're in the clear here, Kevin.
I appreciate your mindset behind this, but just to make sure that you're safe, just to make sure that I'm safe, I will be referring to this as the tragedy of the Scottish play for the duration of the episode. So,
Kevin, that's a whole other documentary that needs to be made yet, because that's got the sound of like a documentary or a docu-series.
Yeah, just going through all of the bad luck that people... Okay, look, here's the deal, folks. You've probably listened to us talk about the history of the name of the tragedy of the Scottish play more than the actual trailer itself, and wondering, what the fuck are you guys doing? You rambled about pumpkin spice lattes and now this? But here's the deal. This teaser is 52 seconds long. And most of that, I would say it's fair to say most of that time is title cards. There really isn't too much. We have a couple images of people walking out of fog. We see 3 women garbed in long dresses. There's probably really special and specific names for all of these people and for the wardrobe, but I've actually never read or seen the play. Therefore, I'm kind of lost on this shit. But they're standing next to a pool, and then who I assume is Macbeth or someone related to Macbeth walks up, played by Denzel Washington. You get a shot of Frances McDormand kind of looking stern, and then that's the end of the trailer. So there isn't really too much to dissect here. It is more or less an announcement teaser for the new Coen brother movie.
Basically, the 3 women seemingly appear, out of the mist as fate would have it. That's funny to me. because I'm familiar with Macbeth a little bit.
Okay.
Do you get it, Kevin?
Nope.
But yeah, I like you said, it's super super atmospheric. It's a teaser, so we only get one line in it. Kevin, were you familiar with that line once you heard it?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, the "something wicked this way come" line, which is from Macbeth, is just like stuff that you hear. Like, we've all heard that, I feel like, in passing. It's even in like one of the Harry Potter movies. So it's popular.
It's a super ubiquitous line. And I was reading it in this instance, something wicked this way comes, but wicked in the cool way. Like that's how I'm feeling about what I'm getting so far. Because it does strike me as something that is stepping outside of the Coen brother comfort zone. I know they've shot a few movies in black and white. The Man Who Wasn't There immediately comes to mind. There might be a couple other like smaller portions of films or other films that may have been in black and white, but yeah, I know they've done black and white with The Man Who Wasn't There. I know that Joel Coen has the propensity to get kind of strange and kind of surreal. Like that's a pretty common thing throughout his entire filmography. But I think the combination of those visuals and that sort of off-kilter tone, I did like the repeated soundtrack of that percussive element, whatever it was.
It was like footsteps or something, right?
Yeah, and something that came to mind for me is one of my favorite trailers ever is the trailer for A Serious Man, which has the main character being thrown against a blackboard being the driving force for the trailer, for the sound effect, for like the sound design of that trailer. And that's something that I know we really take for granted now in 2021, and to a degree can even look at as a trailer trope. But in, fucking 2010, when that movie came out, in that trailer specifically, that was pretty new and a really fresh idea. And I know it's probably not, I'm probably reading a little too much into this by creating the link between them, but if it was intentionally supposed to be a callback to a previous Coen brother trailer, I saw it and I thought it was really neat. But I think it might just be a fun coincidence. But that's something that came to mind while listening to that sound design too.
It's possibly a coincidence. I think they're just excellent with sound design in their trailers overall. It's I haven't seen a whole lot of Coen Brothers films in subsequent trailers, but one that does stick out to me that was like, holy crap, this trailer was amazing when I first saw it, was the True Grit trailer. And that one had tons of like amazing like sound cues and stuff that just go with the tempo of the music. That was a Johnny Cash song too, underlying that whole trailer. It was just really good. So that trailer has always stuck with me. So I wonder if it's not so much a callback as it is just their style. And in their trailers, they love to have that rhythmic aesthetic or aspect to it,
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, and again, this is a very short trailer, not very much for us to go off of, so definitely excited to see where it grows from here. I'm definitely excited for that next trailer. But yeah, as of right now, this is definitely akin to an announcement teaser, and happy to see it announced.
Yeah, my ears are perked, and I will definitely keep it in my mind. That's an Apple TV Plus one, which is like the one streaming service I don't have. So
also coming to theaters.
Well, now I can actually see it.
There you go. Yeah, no, you should be able to see it, man. Yes, somehow, some way, we will definitely find a way to see the tragedy of the Scottish play. We'll just kind of keep our eye out for it, almost like we're bird watching. And you know what else is a bird, James? A finch. That's the trailer. It's the next trailer we're talking about. It's going to be Finch. Here we go.
There was a solar flare. So I hid. Frightened and so alone. And I found you. I'm developing something interesting.
Robots must protect dog.
Hey, what's all the fuss?
I learned to talk dog. I don't think it likes me.
Should be safe once we get into the mountains.
Do you think we'll make it?
Not without my team. What we do together.
I believe in you, Finch.
More like Alan Turing in Hooch, am I right? This is Finch. This is starring Tom Hanks and Caleb Landry Jones. This is directed by Miguel Sapochnik and written by Craig Luck and Ivor Powell. Our random shout out, because we here at Trailer Hitch like to give cast and crew member shout outs because the top billed people tend to hog all the credit. As such, we are going to shout out Tony Barbosa, who is the ager/dyer. Hey, Tony, I'm sure that you have a really complicated job. It does amuse me greatly to imagine you looking at a shirt and just screaming, "Get older!" But I know that you're probably doing a lot of strong, complicated work, and we sincerely appreciate everything you did. Thanks, Tony.
Look, I don't want to take anything away from Tony, but we should definitely not skate over your Alan Turing joke because it took me a while to get it. And then you just kept talking. And I was like, oh, I really want to acknowledge how good of a joke this is because it took me a while to get it. And I'm like, you know what? I was just like nodding like 20 seconds after you said it. I was like, oh, that's good. Because of robots. And
robots
Turner,
and dogs and Tom Hanks.
Tom
There's
Hanks
a
is
three
Turner and Hooch. It's just perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, Tony, good job. Good job, Tony.
Anyway, applaud Tony. But now let's get into it, sir. Let's talk about Finch. All right, so are you looking for a break from bleak news? Well, I'm sorry to office space you, but you forgot about your solar flares. So those come in, they wreck shit. Food and crops are destroyed, but luckily, as we see in the grocery store, bins are still readily available. Alas, there's very few people, though. So our stalwart protagonist, who is played by Tom Hanks, hangs out with a dog, ensuring that doesthedogdie.com will get a fuckload of hits right when this thing drops. Now, Hanks and the dog bond a bunch, and the dog is basically Wilson if it pooped. Hanks asserts a personality onto the dog, but because it's a dog, he's able to bring some personality back to the table. And a lot of the man and his dog type humor definitely exists here. Anytime Tom Hanks does something a little wacky, the dog loves to give the little cockhead motion. So it's one of those things where, it's I think that it works. But before you can say, I am legend, a new character enters the fray. And that is a robot built by Tom Hanks's character. But before you can say Chappie, something to note is there's no Diane word. Otherwise, it does look a lot like Chappie and kind of has this similar tone to him. All right, so with the advent of this robot, they leave the compound to avoid an impending storm. And so now Tom Hanks and the robot bond. The dog isn't a fan of the robot, and I kind of appreciated that just in the sense of there was some conflict, but the conflict that was present within these three characters was ultimately, it's a dog not getting along with a robot. The dog is probably territorial of Tom Hanks. I'm asserting a lot of character traits onto this dog, I recognize. Oh God, am I basically Tom Hanks in this movie now? So anyway, the wild thing about this is the tone. And you hear me talk about this post-apocalyptic movie that begins with climate change and specifically climate disaster, which is incredibly serious and particularly scary and very existential. But the tone here is quasi-optimistic. So the best way I can describe it is it's basically bleak Sundance. So it definitely has those vibes of feel good and here's a man trying to make it on his own, and he's got a little dog, and he's got a little buddy with him, and off he goes. But there is this just like constant backdrop of, oh right, it's the post-apocalypse. And in the moments when you start to forget that, then the trailer has that aerial shot where you see them driving their RV van, and you see someone had written the message, help us, on the roof of one of the buildings. Oh fuck, right, this is post-apocalyptic. And I found that to be actually a really interesting combination. But what about you, man? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely throws you for a loop at the beginning. I wasn't really sure what this, because I've never heard of, like, I didn't hear of anything down the pipeline about, like, the production on this. This just kind of came out of nowhere for me. So I started the trailer and it's like, this looks like you said, bleak. And it just like turns on a dime, right? With once the dog enters
Yes.
frame. And it's the music, the looks on Tom Hanks' face, and the dog is happy, and the inside of his like shelter is like warmly lit and welcoming and inviting. And so
Mhm.
just everything, all aspects of senses just kind of get completely shifted in a 180, right? And then that's where we
Yes.
live for a good portion of the trailer. Even so, he starts building this robot, and the robot's going to help him protect his dog friend and be part of the team. And that all kind of sticks with this same tone until they start to venture outside again. And then you start to get little hints and, just flavors of back into that bleakness. But as you get that feeling that as long as the three of them are together, they're not going to go full bleak.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, basically culminates to them trying to get to the mountains, and stuff's gonna happen. Right?
Basically. Yeah, and I think they have to get to the mountains to avoid the storm. That's basically where I start to kind of dip a little bit with this trailer. Because yeah, I totally understand that they wanted to have a driving engine to the story. They kind of wanted some sort of ticking clock. But it's one of those things where that aspect within this trailer didn't really feel all that defined, because if Tom Hanks was able to withstand a fucking solar flare, then why should I be afraid of some fucking dust? And why should I be afraid of a little bit of rain? And I can totally understand that more likely than not, these storms are going to be much more brutal than what we are used to in our pre-solar flare times. But at the same time, without that threat explicitly established within the trailer, it just kind of felt like, oh, that's the reason why he leaves. And that's why he decides to like leave that compound and hit the road.
Mhm.
It gives me the impression that they want me to focus on kind of the carefree and fun vibes in an environment that all but begets that you should care very much, and it's a bleak time. But like that sort of juxtaposition, I think, is what they really want us to focus on here. And I will say that that was effective, even though Sundance stuff doesn't tend to be the first thing that I gravitate towards. Honestly, like just this little twist in, okay, here's a post-apocalyptic film. That genre is very well treaded, that has a very specific style and a very specific tone. And then just that little twist, all of a sudden it goes, oh shit, this feels really fresh now. And now I'm actually perked up and kind of interested. But yeah, the in quotes dramatic hook for the story didn't really seem quite as well established to me. And I can understand why it needs to be in the trailer. There is this part of me that was wondering, well, you could have just made this a post-apocalyptic hangout movie if you really wanted to. Like, if we weren't really going to be thinking too hard about the storm, then why fucking have the storm? You can just have them hang out, and eventually, Tom Hanks has to get old or die, or perhaps the dog dies, depending on what that one website I mentioned says. But either way, it's one of those things where you could make a hangout movie, or it's one of those things where if we are going to introduce this component, especially because in theory, sure, you avoided one storm. Storms are pretty regular, though. Those are going to keep coming. Like, are you prepared to constantly be on the road, Tom Hanks? It does. It raises a lot of questions, and I do appreciate that tone. But yeah, that was something that kind of stuck out for me.
It's definitely a hangout movie, especially once they move from his like underground shelter to the RV. It's like, oh, this still feels like his fort, his domain. So they're just taking the hangout on the road.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think if that was just the sole focus of it, I would be completely fine with that. But yeah, you throw in that storm element. Honestly, I think that dramatic engine could have just been as simple as okay, well, we're running out of food in this town. It's off to the next one. And that's just sort of what Tom Hanks does in the post apocalypse. I think could have been totally, I think that totally could have worked, you know. But
I
yeah,
think
like
that's
adding the danger element, I think is an interesting choice. But now I'm kind of wondering if that's like clashing a little bit with the have fun, but also in a very melancholy place sort of tone we got here.
I mean, you made the Wilson joke. They're probably also trying to recreate that fun that everyone had with Castaway.
Absolutely, they are. And then in comes Caleb Landry Jones as a robot. Well, I guess that makes it sort of throws an interesting wrench into this.
Wrench because of robots.
Robots.
Get it?
Robot humor. All right. And once we hit robot humor, that means that we have run out of stuff to say. So I'm going to go ahead, man. I'm going to give this a need to see more, but I'm definitely really intrigued by it. And I really don't think that there's too much more that they have to do to get me there. I think, you know, you've already sold me on the carefree hangout vibes. Okay, yeah, I think that's a really interesting take, especially with this genre. I think if I got another trailer that did kind of specify those stakes a little bit more within that conflict, I could very easily see this being bumped up to a need to see. But how about you?
I'm in the same boat with it. You know what's odd about this trailer is Tom Hanks is kind of like known as America's dad, right?
Oh,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
that's just kind of like his nickname. This is the first trailer I'm seeing with him in it that's making me like definitely realize it's like, oh, America's dad is has become America's grandpa now. Like
He's getting to that point. Yeah.
especially like the scene where he's telling the dog like elbows off the table, elbows off the table, like really calmly but insistently. I'm like, oh, Tom Hanks is getting up there, guys. And he leans into it in this trailer. But outside of that, outside of my appreciation for America's Grandpa, I would agree with you that this is a very solid need to see more for me. And yeah, I think that's a fair addition, Kevin, to say it doesn't really need to do much to get me up there. I want to see what else they got. I want to see what else they can come up with in terms of a trailer, and I'm interested to see that.
Well, we are rooting for this, whether this be an underdog or not. But speaking of underdogs, we got to talk about America's underdog with American Underdog.
Go ahead then. Tell me.
Tell you what.
Why a team worth $800 million, one of the most complex offenses ever built, should put you in the driver's seat. You're too old to be a rookie, too green to be a pro. So why in the world would I give you this shot?
I know who I am, and I know why I'm here. If you give me a chance,
Green went down hard and is not getting up.
I will not let you down.
Something special about you, son.
Destiny.
Belongs to the underdogs. You want to prove that?
I hate to be rude, but this is your final Kurt Warner with American Underdog. This is directed by Andrew and John Irwin, written by David Aaron Cohen, John Irwin, and John Gunn. This is starring Zachary Levi, Anna Paquin, Dennis Quaid, Adam Baldwin. Our random shout out is going to go to Barbara Sandlin, who is the country line dancer. Hey, Barbara, dancing and starring in movies? You're a twofer. I love it. Great job.
Double threat.
Double threat. Maybe she sings too. We might be underselling her. But this is American Underdog. Now, here's the deal, folks. You've probably been depressed by the thought of climate disaster. You're likely emotionally drained by whatever ends up happening in the Scottish play. You're probably very sad that at this point now, listening to this, you're thinking, oh man, I should get a pumpkin spice latte, but it's far too late in the day. There's been a lot going on in this episode. And here's the deal. We normally like to balance our palates here on Trailer Hitch, but we do have to talk about something that is just as serious as the aforementioned topics. And that's an aspiring quarterback who was a bit old when he started. Yes, this is American Underdog. This follows Kurt Warner, who faced strife in a long road leading up to the NFL start for the St. Louis Rams. And some of that is dramatized here. The trailer, I think, is at its best when it's in the micro, whether that be the sad daw that comes from the grocery store burn, or the sweet touch of him recognizing he wasn't ready for the NFL up until that moment that comes right after the grocery store. But But this is very much a trailer where you see the font saying that it's based on a true story, and you go, wait, this looks like something from The Blind Side or some shit. And yeah, yeah, it is. So get ready for the score to swell. Get ready to see Anna Paquin basically just being a supporting wife for the brief screen time she has. Get ready to see Kurt Warner's kid go, wait, what the fuck? He has a kid? Are we implying that the kid was holding him back from starting in the NFL? And then having the trailer basically forget about the kid. Get ready for them to imply that the Packers were mean for not letting him start over Brett fucking Favre. And get ready to imply that a guy having a season-ending injury is a good thing. James, what did you think of An American Underdog? Don't let me sway you. If you like this, fucking let her rip.
I didn't.
Okay, perfect.
So
you're in good company.
It definitely got me with the click, right? It clickbaited me hardcore. It's got Zachary Levi, who I think is a charmer, definitely charismatic person. He's excellent in Shazam. He's a good singer, like he's in Tangled. It's just really funny and good actor, right?
Definitely.
And the thumbnail of this trailer also had, Mr. Shazam himself standing in front of amongst the Green Bay Packers. Hey, that's my football team. That's my ride or die, bleed green and gold. Awesome. So, and I like football. And guess what? Just started football.
It did, yes.
I love football season. So this kind of hit all the boxes of like a thing I was excited to click on. And then I started watching it and got just instantaneous Hallmark movie vibes. And I just
100%.
It just didn't feel like I would like it. I don't know how else to critique it other than that broad statement of this just is so not for me.
Yeah, and listen, it's I don't want to necessarily minimize Kurt Warner's struggles. And
Absolutely
I think if I saw Kurt Warner's struggles, I would probably be a bit more empathetic to it. You know what I mean? And like the aging thing, I think is definitely, obviously, clearly a part of that story. And I think that's why the grocery store thing hit as hard as it did, to kind of get that juxtaposition of him as a kid putting the tape of the 13 on his shirt and then going and playing football outside, to then seeing Dan Marino on a Wheaties box that he's putting away. Dan Marino's jersey also has 13 on it. And, looking at Kurt Warner as he's looking at that thinking, what the fuck happened? Yeah, I mean, like, that's very sad. That's very melancholy. And, like, that does make me sort of want to root for that character. But yeah, when they're talking about the strife he's facing, it's basically just a bunch of people looking at him going, you're too old. And it's like, okay, well, I know it's going to work out for him, though. And I think that's also kind of the trick when you're doing a piece about an incredibly famous person, and especially a very talented person. I'm sorry to spoil this, but with like some of my football knowledge, I can tell you, Kurt Warner ends up doing well in the NFL. This does work out for him. And it's kind of like a hard trick to, I think, when you're doing a story about a real life figure, where you have to make the narrative, I think, really compelling on a character front, and you have to kind of reveal a side of the story that people might not be inherently familiar with, but basically just get us with those details and make us really root for that person. And the fact that we know they succeed is completely incidental. You want them to succeed so bad by the end that it doesn't matter that you already knew when you walked in, well, yeah, if Kurt Warner wasn't successful, then they probably wouldn't have made this movie, so it's one of those things where I think that it could be done. But yeah, this trailer doesn't get me there. It definitely doesn't, because it's, again, yeah, it's just kind of focusing on the age component, which, okay, yeah, like I guess that it was sort of a roll of the dice to draft him onto a team. But I think especially because we see so little football happen in the trailer, that not really seeing the thing that our main character is struggling to get good at and will eventually get great at it does definitely just make it, you're correct, man, kind of feel like a Hallmark movie. It does kind of make it feel disconnected in that way.
And I'm not throwing shade on Hallmark movies. I'm just saying very bluntly, those aren't for me. So it's crazy how ridiculously wrapped in things that are for me that this trailer seemed to be, and then it's just more or less the style. And just like the super long, cheesy, dramatic looks after someone says a very poignant line. I mean,
Yeah.
I lost count of the amount of times Kurt Warner just like gazed off into the distance after someone said something. And that's just
It
it's
is
a bit
very
much.
melodramatic. Yeah, especially with the stakes that we have set up, it does feel a bit melodramatic in context.
In
For
excellent,
sure.
you know what? That's it. The stakes that are set up are just like the guy wants to be a famous football player. Cool. Yeah, I think most people that join the NFL want to be a famous football player. It's like it's not
Definitely.
like stakes we haven't seen before. And it's like, yeah, but he's a nice guy. I'm like, okay, cool. he likes Wheaties and he stocks the grocery store and he loves family. It's just like, okay, yeah. Those are all things that we all know. It's like, yep, those are good things. Like on the scale of like thumbs up or thumbs down, it's like, yeah, we all know those are things that good people do.
Some of those things where it's like, yeah, he loves his family. We also barely see him interact with his family in this trailer. It's just stuff like that where, like, I do think this trailer is doing a lot of telling versus showing. And bear in mind, when we say the trailer, this could very well apply to the movie too, but we're just basing our reactions off of the trailer. It does feel kind of paint by numbers, which I was kind of
Yes.
Yeah, and I was kind of disappointed by that because ultimately, how many NFL films do we have? And I mean like actual NFL licensed stories, like not stuff like The Replacements where it's, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's kind of like the NFL. Like we have so few of these. And so I think like the first one in recent memory for me to come to be something where it feels like you could have just taken any old inspirational story and any occupation or any sport and thrown it in, and we could have basically gotten the same result.
Yeah,
like that's definitely a bit disappointing.
It's just kind of like they went, oh, you know what, Zachary Levi kind of looks like Kurt Warner, we could make a movie about that. It's like, yeah, okay. Is that like the best reason to make that movie? I don't know. No, I agree with you though. So it's hard. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of the last one that was actually like NFL, like Draft Day with Kevin Costner. I think that was one.
That came up in my mind too.
Well, Jerry Maguire, those use actual NFL teams.
Yep. So that's like the 80s.
No, I think mid 90s, but yeah,
or 90s.
It's been a while since there was like a really popular one. I think unless we're gonna get emails, but you know what? Bring it on.
Bring the emails. Please bring the emails.
I'm sure we're forgetting some, but.
Look, tell us about all the dope NFL films that are out there. What if every NFL film out there is exactly this movie, just done like 4 or 5 different times? Like there is a Bart Starr movie, but it turned out that Bart Starr was a little old when he started too, and it's American Underdog is basically just a shot-for-shot remake of that movie.
I mean, yeah, in the 50s, everyone was old when they started playing football.
Well, there were also like, drinking a case of beer and smoking a pack of cigarettes every night too.
Yeah,
you had time.
You had to work 20 hours at the mill first, then you went and became a professional football player in your downtime.
Exactly.
So yeah, it just didn't lace up my cleats for me, if you will.
Nice. I might go with the fantasy football way of saying I would unfortunately bench an American Underdog for now. Yeah.
Nice. I would go one step further and put this on my injury reserve spot. I'm not counting on this for the rest of the season.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
official ranking here, Kevin. Let's do it.
It is definitely a never need to see for
Never
me.
need to see it. Double never need to see is for this one. Yeah. Sorry,
We do
Zach.
need we do need sad air horns, I think, for double never need to sees going forward.
No, I can always provide it. It's just sad trombone. You go or a foghorn. That's like a foghorn, right?
Yeah.
Double never need to seize. There you go. Done.
I hope you're ready to pull that sound clip so that way we can use that every episode going forward. Okay. But folks, were we being a little too harsh on American Underdog? For God's sakes. Just because Kurt Warner was old doesn't mean we have to dogpile on the son of a bitch too. You can write to us, let us know. Or maybe, speaking of dogs, you were looking at Finch and going, I think that clash in tone and setting was a bit too much for me. Or perhaps you looked at the tragedy of the Scottish play and say, just call it Macbeth, you fucking coward. Whatever your thoughts may be, you can go ahead and let us know. You can write us an email at trailerhitchmailbox@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can send us a message on Facebook or right on our wall. If you just search Trailer Hitch Podcast there, you should be able to find us. Otherwise, you can tweet at us at Trailer Hitch Pod if you want to keep that missive to about 280 characters. Or if you want that missive to be a picture. Good news, we have an Instagram at Trailer Hitch Podcast. Otherwise, you can leave a comment on the very YouTube video you are watching currently. And hey, speaking of YouTube, be sure to like, rate, subscribe, do all the things that help us find listeners. And for all of you fine folks on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Stitcher, please feel free to like, rate, and subscribe on all of those as well. Before we go, we would like to thank Danny Schmitz from Lost in a Name for the amazing intro that you hear at the top of every episode. We would like to thank Rachel Ashley for the amazing cover art that you see on all of our various social medias. You can find her work at Mighty Creations on Instagram. We would like to thank Jenny Hawks, our Bad Movie and social media correspondent, for her sterling work week in and week out. And we would also like to thank Casey Clowers for the amazing outro, which you will hear momentarily.
Trailer Hitch.
Oh, is it that bad? I think I might have stumbled once or twice, but otherwise I think I was okay.
It just was meant to be a callback? A beat revival?
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite on the ball with catching it. I'm just a little tired. It's been a while since I've had a pumpkin spice latte. Who said beat revivals have to be funny?
You basic bitch.